Hey guys, it's Mrs. Chittix. I wanted to share with you some slides that I have created actually a couple of years ago when introducing the instrument families, and this is something that was fully intended to be used with you guys this last quarter of the school year, but with our given circumstances, I am doing this via Seesaw instead. So I am going to start with this video and I'm going to take you through some slides regarding the strings family and kind of talk a little bit about the individual instruments. Hey guys, it's Mrs. Chittix. This is the Instruments of the Orchestra String Family video. On the next few slides, we will be introduced to the four main instruments in the orchestral string family. And the biggest thing to really kind of keep in mind with the string instruments is that they all look very similar. They are all, they are, Hey guys, Mrs. Chittix here. We are going to be exploring the string family on this video. In the next few slides, you will be introduced to each of the four orchestral string instruments. So here we go. So the first instrument we are going to look at is the violin, probably the most popular and known string instrument that people think of when they hear string family. I'm going to go ahead and go through the bullet points and explain a couple of them so they make more sense to you. So the violin is the smallest instrument in the classical string family or orchestral string family as you may know it. It has four strings and a wooden body. Remember that because that's going to apply to all of the other instruments that we're going to talk about in this video. It produces a high-pitched sound, and we know this because it is the smallest instrument, and we have learned that the smaller an instrument is, the higher the sound it's going to make, and the larger the instrument is, the lower the sound. So as the instruments get larger, the pitches are going to start getting lower. It is, I already said this, the more popular of the four-string instruments. There are two ways to play the violin, and this is also another thing that will apply to the other instruments as well. You can bow using that long stick that you see there by gliding it across the strings, which is the more traditional way of playing, or you can pluck the strings by taking your finger and kind of almost picking at the strings to give them a different sound. This is a fancy Italian word that we call pizzicato. So try and say that with me. Pizzicato. Pizzicato. It's kind of fun to say. And there is a YouTube video down below that gives you an example. Since I am creating this video on Keynote, I can't actually go to the video right now, but you can go to the video on your own as you're watching this if you choose. Moving on, we have the viola, which is slightly larger than the violin, but not a whole lot. And because of that, it does produce a slightly lower and warmer sound than the violin. I like to call the viola the violin's big sister or big brother, whatever you want to call it, just because it is a little bit bigger. Again, four strings and a wooden body. So when you look at the viola, it looks just like the violin. You actually couldn't tell that this is the viola unless you had it sitting side by side to a violin. And then, again, two ways to play the viola, same as the violin. You can bow or you can pluck. Say it with me in Italian. Pizzicato. Pizzicato. It's really fun to say, and I'll probably say that a million times in this video. All right, moving on. We have the cello, and if you notice, we are getting bigger, which means, that's right, if you go to the fourth bullet point, it produces a low, full sound. So definitely not as high and bright as the violin or the viola. It's the second larger string instrument, played in an upright position, which means if you look at it, it's vertical, and the player sits, or the performer, I should say, sits on a chair typically to play the cello. Not quite big enough to stand, but definitely Definitely not small enough to rest on your chin. And if you notice, just an interesting little characteristic, there is a metal rod that sticks out in the bottom, and this basically just helps support the cello on the ground so it doesn't wobble around while the player actually is playing. The little rubber knob at the end kind of keeps it from slipping around on the ground as well. So definitely an important feature. 4 strings in a wooden body, and you can bow or pluck, or as we call it, pizzicato. Pizzicato. All right, moving on. Last but certainly not least, some people, this is actually their favorite of them all. This is the double bass, or we call it sometimes the string bass or the contrabass, but we'll call it the double bass. It is the largest of all the string instruments, and if you look at it again, it 4 strings, a wooden body. You can pluck, pizzicato, or you can bow, which is in fact most often the double bass is bowed, but in a lot of times, like in jazz band, you will hear they will use pizzicato method to actually produce that jazzy sound. And again, because it is the largest, it produces a really low and dark sound, which is the lowest of all those string instruments. And another fact, it is played in an upright position just like the cello. Except the performer usually stands because it's that big, or sometimes they can opt to kind of sit on like a high stool. So they're almost standing, but they can rest their legs just a little bit. Definitely important characteristics to keep in mind. Fun fact, and I kind of mentioned this a second ago, it is a popular jazz instrument, and you wouldn't normally think about an orchestral string instrument in a jazz band, but that is actually not the case. It is a very popular jazz instrument, and most jazz pieces are not complete without a double bass. Guys, this completes the string family. Be on the lookout for our other instrument families to come. We have the woodwind family, the brass family, and the percussion family we will touch on. I hope this has helped you in identifying those 4 instruments. There are other string instruments out there, such as the harp or the guitar, the ukulele. We don't talk much about those in music class. We more or less just focus on these 4 orchestral instruments, but sometimes I do get the question about the harp or the guitar or the ukulele, and yes, you are correct. Those are all string instruments, and they do fit in this category. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on the next one.